I got everything. So, let's get started. Let me first say hello to everybody out there and welcome to the channel. 3 Basket Living. My name is Tom. If you hadn't been here before, my biggest request of you, if you would please, is to share with somebody else. If you hear anything or see anything that might be beneficial or edifying to somebody else, just please do that. So, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to make an attempt to explain and show how to make, or how to cultivate, better yet, lactic acid bacteria, LABs, LactoBACILLUS, the rod-shaped beneficial bacteria that is well known and quite vital in our lives every single day. I think the name is Andrea. If I got that right, Andrea, here I am. I am trying to, or attempting to, fulfill my commitment to show you how I go about cultivating labs. But I remember, 4 or 5 years ago when I started getting into or looking into natural farming techniques. And I started getting really excited about it. And during that process, when I came across LactoBACILLUS being utilized in natural farming techniques, there was a lot of unanswered questions because there was a lot of variables or differences of opinions out there. So my goal here is to approach this a little bit different and try to answer some of those questions that I had to give a little bit of understanding of why we're doing something or why we have certain ratios and things of that nature. I'm going to make an attempt to do that. This is not going to be a complicated thing. It's very simple, quite easy to do, and I want to start here at the end after we cultivate our bacteria. I want to start at the end a little bit, and here's the reason why. It's because this might help somebody out there to understand when you go to culturing your own lactic acid bacteria. It'll give you an idea about how much you want to culture. Let me give you an example here. When we culture our bacteria, right here, this is our end result, going through the process that I'm going to show today or in this video. This is our end result. This is a 1-quart mason jar filled with lactic acid bacteria whey, with trillions of bacteria in there. Okay, this is our end result. So that's why I had that placed over here. Now I'm going to just kind of move on down the line here. And I'm going to start with this. Right here, let's separate these just a little bit. Right here, I have a half-gallon glass jug with a breathable lid. It's a breathable because I have a 1/8 inch or 3/32 hole drilled in my little plastic lid. This is a snap-on lid to this milk jug. And I have a coffee filter here acting as a filtering device for that 1/8 inch hole in the top of my lid here. I want this to be breathable, and the filter just keeps gnats and flies out of here. So that's what you're seeing on these jugs here. So what we have here is this. This and this, same thing. Same thing. With the exception of we have a 1-to-1 ratio by weight of brown sugar to this quart jar here, and that's how I obtain this half-gallon of this solution. So this is this with brown sugar at a 1-to-1 ratio, maybe a little bit more. There's good reason for that. Okay. So why do I have it in these two different states? That's a good question. What it comes down to is the storage ability, or how we want to storage, or what we're capable of. In this state right here, when we finish our product here, to get shelf life out of this and this, because that's the objective here. Let me just state this real quick. During this process that I'm going to show and other processes that you see, you're going to see a lot of variables. You're going to see some differences in the containers and the approaches that people take to go about what I'm doing here. I would encourage you not to focus so much on the style or the way somebody goes about doing it and the containers and the different tools that they use. Focus on the objective, because you're going to come up with your own way of going about it. I want to restate that. So we have this in this state, and our objective here is to get some shelf life. And how we get shelf life out of these things so that we don't have to culture lactic acid bacteria labs every time that we want to input them into our fields, our gardens, or into our lives in any kind of way. We don't want to have to go through that process every single time. So our objective here and our goal is to have some shelf life. And we get the shelf life by putting these microbes in a sort of comatose state. We're putting them to sleep, if you will. We don't want them to be active. So in order to obtain that, we need to store this in a refrigerator, which is dark and cold. Typically around probably 33, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's how we keep these bacteria from not becoming overly active and therefore creating a big mess, because they will feed, they will populate, they will emit gases as they are being active and create pressure. So when we put this in the fridge, typically what you're going to hear out there is somewhere along the lines of 1 to 3 years storage life. You're going to get some differences, no matter if you're getting it out of a book, somebody else's video, a blog, article. You're going to find some differences of opinions in a lot of this stuff. But typically, you're going to get 1 to 3 years, and that's pretty understood throughout the natural farming community, in the refrigerator. Now, some will say that you need to do it with a breathable lid, and some will say non-breathable lid. Well, I'm focused on the objective, and if the temperature, if it's refrigerated, puts these microbes in a state of laziness, they're not active, then I got to questioning whether I need a breathable lid. And other people are storing it with a sealed lid, just as I am. I've had this in the refrigerator going on pretty close to a year. I haven't lost electricity for any significant amount of time, so I've had no issues. My lid's not bulging, and my glass jar here, my mason jar, hasn't busted. But you may want to put it in there with a breathable lid as a precautionary method. We have this, which is this, okay, and same objective we want to accomplish here. We want to keep these guys inactive. We want to put them to sleep, so to speak. And we do that with brown sugar. I'm going to answer the question right now, because somebody's going to ask. Because I had the same question. Because people were asking, about white granulated sugar. No. Organic cane sugar. No. No molasses. No honey. No backstrap molasses. And this is the reason why we want to use brown sugar. Because from my understanding, and I think it's true, and I believe it, based on everything that I've read so far, is that we get some of the same characteristics of the brown sugar as we do with salt, or the seamen did, utilizing salt out at sea to preserve their catches or food sources or whatnot. We use salt because salt and brown sugar, in this case, have the ability to have this osmotic, or create this osmotic pressure, the process of osmosis. And basically what that means in my simple mind is it's taken away the water, moisture, away from the microbes, which they need to survive and thrive or be active. It binds up them water molecules and deprives the water molecule from the bacteria. Therefore, they become inactive, go to sleep, and we obtain the same objective. So, shelf life on this is going to be commonly understood out there, with the little variables out there, between 1 to 3 years also. But it still needs to be in a cool, dark spot. not in the refrigerator, but on a shelf, protected from direct sunlight. At all stages, we want to try to eliminate or reduce the amount of sunlight and, more importantly, those UV rays within the sunlight. So 1 to 3 years non-refrigerated, 1 to 3 years refrigerated. Definitely a breathable lid on this in this, because just in case you don't put enough brown sugar in there, that's why I like to put an extra little bit in there just to make sure. It may heat up. You're still going to have some feeding going on, so you want a breathable lid, and that's how we go about that. So that's why we have the same here in these two different states. It comes down to storage. So what I'm going to do from here, I'd like to get this back into the refrigerator. I'll take it back out to the shop in that refrigerator when I get done here. Stick this back in here. Okay, so now that we understand it, this is our LactoBACILLUS, okay, solution. And we got the microbes put to sleep. So now we move on to here. So now what we want to do, we want to start utilizing our LactoBACILLUS. So now we need to wake them up. And how we do that, because this is pretty common across the board. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but the common way to go about doing that is we want to dilute this with water at a 1 to 20 ratio. That's what we do. And that's pretty standard across the board when it comes to this. It's about a 1 to 20 ratio with water. So now, as opposed to taking away those water molecules from the bacteria, we're introducing a lot more water. And the small amount of brown sugar that's remains in here can't keep or can't bind up all that water from the molecules. So now they start waking up. They become active. So there again, we want a breathable lid. So now we've got active labs going on here. The typical amount of time for storage and shelf life at this state here that you're going to hear is going to typically be somewhere between 3 to 6 months. 6 months is pretty common. I've heard up to 9 months in a year. But the norm you're probably going to come across is somewhere between 3 to 6 months. I've done longer, successfully, had no problem, but I do try to keep them in a cool, dark place and make sure they're vented. So now we're starting to get somewhere here. So we see this half gallon of our labs here in this state. We have 100, I'm going to keep it in tablespoons. We have 128 tablespoons in here. And we do a 1 to 20 ratio, you know, to bring them alive. I have another half gallon jug here, which is, you know, 128 tablespoons. So to get that 1 to 20 ratio, I'm looking somewhere along the lines of 6 tablespoons. A little more accurate might be 19 point something teaspoons. I generally just go with 6 full teaspoons and maybe a drop or two, you know, a little bit, and get that. So I'm going to just keep it at 6 because that's basically what I do. So I took 6 teaspoons, or tablespoons, I'm sorry, out of my labs here of 128. That leaves me 122 tablespoons left. So in theory, if I took this half gallon here and I went 20 to 1 ratio, that gives me 20 of these half gallon containers. That equates to 10 gallons of these labs, which is still highly concentrated. Billions and billions of microorganisms, lactobacilli, in this container. So from this point, now we need to dilute it again. And there's a couple reasons why we want to dilute it. This is not harmful in this state right here, but we dilute for a couple reasons. Number one is, if I hadn't said it before, I can't remember, but when it comes to natural farming techniques, it is about organic farming. And it is about having healthier, more nutritional food. But a big component about natural farming is about the efficiency, the availability of the things that are provided to us freely in this earth by our Creator, is being extremely low cost. That is a big component, to natural farming techniques, because unlike farmers today, man, they are struggling. Okay, it is hard to run a full-scale farm today because of the cost impact upon the farmers. Corporate ag, trying to convince farmers to be more successful or to be more efficient in their farming practices so that they could sell them these synthetics and this equipment and all this junk that makes it so hard on them. And they create this fear within people that doing stuff like this, and many others like it, when it comes to fertilizers and stuff, they create this fear like this is too complicated and too hard for them. And therefore, now they got our farmers of today kind of by the cojones. You know what I mean? And it's not as good, it's not as efficient, it's not as effective, it's not as healthy. And it sure costs a lot of money on our farmers to go get all these inputs to try to struggle and get a good crop year after year. And that crop today, it doesn't have the nutritional value that our food once had. So that's a big part of natural farming techniques. Okay, it's about keeping it natural, organic, healthy, and extremely low cost. So, and this plays into that. So we got this 128 tablespoons, or we got this half gallon, and we dilute it 1 to 20 ratio. That gives us 10 gallons of this. Now this is where you're going to start hearing about a lot of different ratios and applications, because now we want to get to using this. And the reason is because it depends on how you're going to utilize it. Remember, one of the key components is cost. So therefore, we obtain that low cost by not wasting. So we don't need a whole lot of these lactic acid bacteria when we go to apply it. So you're going to typically hear somewhere along the lines of 1 to 20 ratio, further diluting from here, at 1 to 20, 1 to 50, 1 to 100, 1 to 500, and 1 to 1,000. Okay? When it comes to labs, a lot of times you're going to hear about that 1 to 1,000 ratio because we're utilizing the water as a carrier, just like you do in essential oils. You don't need that high concentration of essential oils, so we have a carrier oil for that application, but we're also utilizing water in a lot of these natural inputs that we cultivate and we develop ourselves as a carrier, so that we get a high concentrate or a high volume of water when we go to apply this on our fields and in our gardens or wherever. That water carries it down into the rest of the soil food web to interact with all the other microbes and protozoa and enzymes and get down to the root level of our plants. So that's sometimes why you're going to see the 1 to 500 and 1 to 1,000 ratio. Okay? 1 is so we don't waste, and 2, we're using water as a carrier. So what I typically do, what I'm doing now, because this is extremely low cost and the lighting's changing here again, I have a skylight above me, and so when the clouds come in, it changes the lighting in here. So I'm hoping that you can still see me. If you can't, listen for the voice. Oh boy. All right. So what I typically do, I try to shoot for about a 1 to 100 ratio. And based on my habits here, it turns out to be about a 125, 126 to 1 ratio is about what I typically use it as when I'm dealing with the labs here. So to make things simple and easy on me, when it's time for me to use, especially when I'm doing it in this manner here, I will typically take a gallon jug here, and I will take about 2 tablespoons out of here, and I'll put it into here. That's going to give me, because there's 256 tablespoons in a gallon, so if I take 2 tablespoons, I'm getting somewhere around 125 to 128 ratio with water. and I dilute it. And then I take it from here because now it's usable. And I just fill up these spray bottles, and I'm obviously not going to utilize the rest of it. That's not a problem. You just take it and you go water some houseplants or somewhere out in a flower bed, or do like I do sometimes, and I'll pour the rest into this 1 gallon spray can or sprayer, and then I fill the sprayer up the rest of the way with water. Depending on how I adjust my the spray tip on here, I'll take this and I'll go inject it into my compost piles, or I put a little bit in my liquid compost that I am making. If I want to use it as foliar spray, I do it in the evening. Adjust my nozzle and I go spray my fruit trees or my vegetables in my garden, house plants, outdoor plants, wherever you want to utilize it at. You see that we get 10 gallons of this, and I only took 2 tablespoons from here to get per gallon of water. 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. That gets me about 120 something to 1 ratio, just for 1 gallon of water. And this will last us in our latrine approximately about a month and a half. And it's good for that long, because typically you're going to hear about at this, when you further dilute it, you want to use it within about 30 to 60 days. And we do so quite well with these 2 spray bottles. And that's why we want small spray bottles. This gets used in our compost toilet, but I sometimes get out of the shower and I spray it on me and rub it on my skin. Or after I get done brushing my teeth, I spray it in my mouth and swish it around. And I got those beneficial bacteria, in my mouth. So, understanding that, if we went to 1,000 to 1 ratio, which a lot of people do, if we took this half gallon here and we dilute this 1,000 to 1, that comes out to 500 gallons. A 500 gallon tank, or 500 times that you fill up your 1 gallon jug or your 1 gallon sprayer. If you want to go 500-1 ratio out of this half gallon, then you're still looking at 250 gallons that can be applied to your garden, your fields, your orchards, and stuff like that. And remember, we get 20 of these half-gallon jugs here, or 10 gallons of this. So you start doing the math, and you can see how far this goes. Before we go into cultivating our lactic acid bacteria, which I stuck that in the fridge, it's the way. So you understand when we go through that process how much you think you want to cultivate. I thought that was important, and you can see how low cost when we go to do that this is. So we're going to turn this camera off. I'm going to be back here in 3 days, about 3 days time, so I can get a little head start. I'm still going to show everything on how I obtain and get to this point right here. I'll be right back. Looking probably, hopefully a little bit different and some different clothes. All right? Cool. Okay, I got a couple things here, and we're going to get started on culturing our lactic acid bacteria. So what I got here is some rice. I got a 1 cup measuring cup, but I've only got it about half full of rice. Just any cheap rice will do. Now you don't have to use rice. People use other grains, wheats and wheat berries and barleys and so forth. Basically what we're trying to do here is we are going to create, in this case, what they call rice wash water. All it is just the water that you typically would dump out down the drain. A lot of people, when you wash your rice before cooking, that milky water, that's what we're after. And the reason we're after that is because basically I look at it like this. We're creating a bait, a bait and attractant for bacteria. Some people will take the rice and they'll put it in a bowl or a pan. Some people say it's got to be warm. Some people say, boil your water or just room temperature. Some people don't even mention anything about it. They'll put it in a bowl, a pan, stir it around, a little bit, and just try to wash that rice. What I like to do when I do this is I'm going to go ahead and use some water here. Now, when it comes to how much rice, there are some folks out there saying you got to use, they got kind of like a recipe, 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. I'm going to just say you can wash all that stuff out. What determines how much rice you need is going to be based on what your intentions are with the rice when you get done washing it. If you're going to chuck it in the trash, you may not want to waste a cup of rice, even though it's cheap, but you may not want to waste it. I wouldn't waste it because nothing in this whole process has to be wasted. And hopefully I'll remember to cover some of that. So just think about what your intentions are for the rice when you get done washing it. In this case, I'm going to use a 1/2 cup, and I'm just going to put a little bit of water in there. I ain't measuring it. I don't care about measuring. Oh, well, let me do this. And I like doing it like this. I'm going to use a mason jar here and not my fingers. And I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to shake it. I don't know, I'll shake it for 30 seconds, a minute, you know. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm allowing the rice grains to bounce up against one another, rub up against one another. And I just think it just makes it easier. I get more abrasion with the rice scratching up against one another than I do with my fingers. So what we're doing is we are getting that starchy coating off the rice, a complex carbohydrate, all right, which is going to be a food source and attractant bait for microbes. That's our objective. Concentrate on the objectives of the steps or the process more so than what people use and what procedures they take to accomplish the same objective. You're going to come up with your own ways, just as I've changed some things from what I've read or seen or watched other people do years ago, and I just like doing it like this. You see the milkiness? Just like when you go to wash your rice before you cook it, that's what we got. We got that starchy, complex carbohydrate water solution now that they call rice water wash. That's simple. This is the first step. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to just transfer it here into another mason jar, and I'm going to use a little strainer. Some people strain it finer, some people don't even do it at all. And all I'm doing is trying to collect any debris from the rice that might not fit through this little mesh screen that I utilize and keep the rice out. So I'm just going to gently pour this. That's good enough for me. There's your rice. You can wash it again, and if you want fluffier rice and less sticky rice when you go to cook it, now you can cook it, or do enough rice to make a quick rice pudding or something like that, or do enough rice to where you can have it for dinner. That's what dictates how much rice and water you use. At this point here, I'm going to make sure my rim is dry. Now we have our rice wash water, and that's pretty doggone milky. Now what we're going to do with this, I'm going to use a coffee filter because they just fit over my little pint jars, my mason jars, and then I'm going to take my ring here. I can basically just kind of a little snap on, and I'll probably give it like a little light half turn there. That's just so if I pick it up, it doesn't fall out. You can use paper towel, you can use a napkin, you don't have to use this ring, whatever container you decide to utilize. You can utilize a rubber band, something like these that I use all the time, and place it over your container, all right? You can use butcher paper, not the butcher paper with the waxy side. You just want a breathable lid. That's all we want. Because what we're going to do from here now is we're going to set this aside. We have bait, and we're going to attract microbes. Now, already off your rice, I guarantee you already got LactoBACILLUS in there. So we're going to let this sit, and typically what you're going to hear is somewhere between 3 to 5 days, and it's dependent upon the temperature. What it's more dependent upon, because we're thinking about the objective, what we want microbes to enter in That's why we have a breathable lid, so that microbes can enter in, but we keep out gnats, we keep out flies, any dust and debris. And we're going to let this sit for 3 to 5 days. It's really not determined by a clock or a calendar. What you want to do is, when you make this stuff, is you want to smell it. I mean, whiff it in. It should be pretty inert. You might smell your coffee filter, or paper towel, or napkin, or whatever to do. Or if you want to be sure, smell it before you put your vented lid, and you'll smell this slight starchy smell. And when this smell changes, what we're wanting to do is we want this to ferment. We want it to just start the fermenting process. And that's what really determines when you go to the next step from here. Is you'll smell, and when you start smelling that change in the aroma at its peak moment, when it's just starting to smell kind of a little sweet, maybe a hint of sour, but it's just started the fermentation process. Where do you set it? You're going to hear indoors or outdoors. Either or will work. But I'm going to throw my little piece of advice in there. If you are a germophobic kind of person and you bleach the heck out of your house, you're using Pine Sol, you're using aerosols like Glade and Febreze, things like that, and you have maybe something like a $5,000, $10,000 filtration system for your household to filter out anything and every living microbe, then you will benefit by setting this outside. The key thing here is to protect it from direct sunlight, protect it from the rain, protect it from being disturbed by the animals or the kids. That's your primary goal for that 3 to 5 days, but more importantly, when you get that slight change in the aroma and the fermentation process starts. I have some already here. Now, I got a little paper bag. The bottom was broke out of it, but I just made a sleeve over it, and I set this outside, and it'll be just fine. But in our cabin, we have the doors open quite often, windows and stuff like that, and we don't spray all that kind of stuff. So what's outside is pretty much inside in our cabin for the most part. So, did I do the right one here? Yeah. So I will set this aside, and we're going to go ahead and utilize this. I'm not going to utilize this for making more labs, but I'll explain that in a minute. That'll sit there for 3 to 5 days. So now I have some that's already made, okay? And I can tell it's already started, all right, the fermentation process. So I want to utilize this. Now, the next step here, all right, I guess I better explain myself. If you mix up a cup or 2 cups, maybe, because you're going to eat rice that evening for dinner, okay? There's other uses for the rice. You don't have to eat it if you don't want to. But also, when you collect that much rice wash water and you determine how much you want to use, that's why at the beginning of the video we went through that end process. This will help you determine how much you want to cultivate and starting this process here. So in this case, I don't even know really how much I have. But whatever I don't use in my rice wash water, or you don't use, can be utilized elsewhere as well. At least pour it in your flower bed or something like that. Whether it's unfermented or fermented, look into the Asian cultures. Look at their beautiful, strong, silky, smooth hair and their complexions, because they have been practicing utilizing rice wash water for centuries in their hair. You can utilize it as a final rinse in your hair. You can utilize it with cotton balls. Okay, you have to go doing all your own homework on that, because this is not a beauty channel. This is about as much beauty as you're going to get on this channel. So there's other uses for this rice wash water, no waste. So keep that in mind and maybe go look into that a little bit. So what I have here, I got my rice wash water. And this is pretty common. Nothing has to be exact. what we want to do is we really want to cultivate the labs now. And labs love milk. So I got whole milk here, a cheap brand of whole milk. You can use 1% milk, 2% milk, skim milk. Some say they used and done this process with powdered milk. I really don't know how that works, but that's what they say, and it can still be done. You can go organic milk, you can go milk straight from the cow. The only advice that I can give you on that is you might have a little bit more difficulty in this process using whole milk straight from the cow when dealing with the cream. You want to remove the cream, from my understanding, so that when we get finished on this next step, it'll be an easier process for you. So what I'm going to do with the amount I want to make, I'm going to make a lot less, I'm hoping, than what I made before. And this is going to be for somebody else. So we want to do a 1-to-10 ratio. That's pretty common across the board. Doesn't have to be precision measurements, but that's what I'm going to be shooting for, 1-to-10 ratio. So what I'm going to do, I got 1 cup. I'm going to put in this. I've been letting this milk sit out a little bit, trying to get it to room temperature. I'm going to use 5 cups of milk. I think that's 3. Five cups of milk. That's what I'm using. I love milk. Now, doing a 1-to-10 ratio, if I got 5 cups in here, that says a half a cup of my rice water wash. So that's what I'm going to do. Actually, I want to do this. Let me explain something real quick. I've been moving this around too much. You're going to have sediment that's going to settle on the bottom. We don't want to utilize that. Some people get concerned about this little film that floats on top of your rice wash water. Okay? And they say don't utilize it. Most people aren't concerned about it, but most people are trying to avoid utilizing the sediment on the bottom of your rice wash water. So don't do like I do here and sitting there jacking it around and everything. So what I want to do is I want to filter that. And I'm going to use this little filter, and you can go finer filter. And I'm just going to, what you want to do, I can't measure it, can I? Yeah, I can. I'm doing it right here. Duh. Get it together, Tom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to very gently pour this in here and fill it up, because I'm going to utilize a half a cup. Can't see here. Doesn't have to be precise. And now I've filtered out some of that stuff. Doesn't have to be precise, but you're looking for a 1-to-10 ratio at this point. So all we're going to do is I'm going to pull that right into that milk. I'm going to use the back end of one of my wife's spoons here, and I'm just going to give it a little stir. That's it, just to mix it up. This is basically the first step or process into cheese making is what we're doing. So this milk is going to separate. It's going to form a big crust, curds on top, that you can get your cheese out of, and then it's going to separate into whey down below that. And you'll have some sediment down at the bottom. And we're going to be looking for that fluid, the whey, in between the curds and the sediment on the bottom. That's what we want. All right, so there is our 1-to-10 ratio of our rice washed water. Goes into our container with our milk, and I'm using this clear container to kind of give you a demonstration. Again, using coffee filters, just fits perfect. These things are cheap. A breathable lid. All right, I'm going to put it on there. I've already kind of formed it. Again, paper towel, napkins. All we want to do is keep the gnats, flies, and any unwanted dirt out of there. I have a fairly sized, good, decent sized little rubber band here, and I'm going to put it on This container works pretty good for utilizing these rubber bands, but I could go right there. I like using the coffee filters because they're a little bit stronger than the napkins and paper towels. I find them to be, and this just happens to work out pretty conveniently. These little containers you can get at your box store, Wally World, something like that. So now from here, what we're going to do, we want to do the same thing. We want to protect it from UV rays. Keep it out of direct sunlight. This process here is going to take somewhere around 5 to 7 days. I've had it done in 4 days. Depends on the temperature. So leave it inside. You don't have to put this outside. You can leave it inside, and you're just going to wait. And now we have a visual here of when we want to start retrieving our whey out of here when it goes to separating. That's the nice thing about using clear. But actually my favorite container to do this step in is the pot out of a crock pot. One of the little crock pots, because those pots, they got that enamel coating. They're smooth and slick, and it just makes it real easy to dislodge the cheese curd from the side walls of it, and there's no lid to work around when you get your cheese curds. It's not that big of a deal, but it just works out nice. You'll see this stuff everywhere else as well. There's other videos out there and other pictures and blogs and magazines or articles going through this process. It's very easy. So up to this point, all we did was get our rice wash water. It takes somewhere 3 to 5 days, but it's primarily determined on that point where it just starts to ferment. We took our rice and some water to create it, and just filter it and let it sit. All right. Once we get to that point, all we're doing is 1 to 10 ratio of our rice washed water, inoculating milk with those bacteria that are in there, and they're really going to go to town. They're going to enjoy this lactose sugar within the milk and start separating, and you're going to get a byproduct of cheese curds and the whey, and we're after that whey. That's what you see in the 1 quart jar that we put back into the refrigerator. All right, I'll be right back then. Do this. Okay, here we are now, a few days later. This has actually went along a lot faster than what normally would go on. This only took 4 days, of course. I probably could have done it probably about 8 hours ago, but we're still just fine. I haven't created any mold on top. So pull the top off here, and what you see is this, I don't know, this crater-like looking surface, almost like the moon or something. So what we got here, we got the separation that took place that we were wanting, and we have our curd on top, and we got the whey in the bottom, and we're going to have some sediment down below. So all we want to do from here is the objective, how you go about doing it, what containers, how you filter it, whatever you do, your objective is to get the whey that is in between the curd and the sediment on the bottom. And a lot of people do a lot of things. I have a 5-gallon bucket strainer. You can pick these up at your local box store. This particular ones that I pick up it's a brand of HDX 5-gallon elastic top strainers. Comes in a 2-pack. Very inexpensive. You could also use something like this, King Cooker. These are the disposable paper oil filters, that you'd put in a funnel and filter out your fry oils if you still utilize things like that. also wanted to share with you these canned bands, a bag of these. It says it comes 4 ounces, all right? And I'm just sharing this. It's by a corporation called Alliance. It even says it's woman owned. So if you'd like to support a woman business owner, I picked these up at, what's that store? Dollar General. You pick these up very cheaply. And what they are is these nice, long, elastic rubber bands. Those come in handy in so many areas around here. It's crazy. I just want to share a few items here, and of course coffee filters I'm big into. So here's our objective here, because I know this is turning into a long video, but the bottom line is this isn't a fast food restaurant. I'm not just here to show you cute little chickens and give you cute little chicken names and pet names, or solicit my kids with some soft heartstring pulling music. You know, this is here to share some knowledge or experiences, you know, from myself to you. But I'm trying to make it quick. Anyhow, some people will get this whey out of here and by using something like this, a syringe. Well, I got mine. Hold on. Paper towel or toilet tissue or something in there, you know, to keep it clean and everything. And they'll use some sort of syringe like this, a basting syringe, or even take a turkey baster, you know, create a hole in that crust, and they'll extract the whey out of there. People do it several different ways. I myself, I prefer just to go ahead and filter it the best I can. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab me something here. Remember, concentrate on your objective, and you use the tools and the items that suit you best in order to get the whey out. Okay, I'm going to take a spatula here, and I'm going to dislodge this curd from the side here. I don't want to disrupt it too much, but I'm going to accomplish this one way or the other. Okay, it's pretty much dislodged with that right there. Then I'm going to take a knife here. Man, that's a big knife. I don't need that big knife. And then I'm just going to cut my curd in half. And I'm going to cut it again to make quarters. Just something like that. Nice and easy. I'm using this clear container here, you know, for demonstration purposes. Like I said before, I prefer the small crock pot if I want to make a small batch, because I don't have this lip on this container that I got to go through. But that's okay. I'm just going to try and gently grab some of this curd without mixing it in too much with the whey. And I'm going to take this 5-gallon bucket strainer on my little basket sieve here. I'm going to put this over it. I've used this many, many times, many things. I mean, with stuff like this. And I'm going to set this in here. And the reason I'm going to do this, and I'm just using this big stainless bowl to collect the residual whey that comes off these curds. And by doing this, I keep my curds contained to collect them, so that I can feed them to the dogs or convince the wife to make a quick farm cheese or something. So now I'm going to take this little, I don't know what to call it, some kind of ladle for, I don't know, maybe they use it in fry baskets or something like that, deep frying. But that's what I'm going to utilize here. And I'm going to try, I can't do that right there. I'm going to have to break it up and get me a piece up top here. So, it's going to break apart. That's okay. That's all right, because we're going to filter it all. This is what I'm after, or what I want to accomplish here. Now that I got that first one out, the other ones come out pretty easy. Yeah. That right. Yeah. And it smells cheesy. Some people try to warn you to make you think it smells foul. It does not. It smells like cheese. Cottage cheese. All right, now I'm just going to let that set, and it's going to drain in the bowl. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some filtering on this. And what I'm going to use, I'm just going to use this plastic measuring cup. I'm going to use another sieve with a fine screen on it. And then at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to pour this, and I'm going to try avoid getting a lot of the bottom sediment. But I do quite a bit of filtering anyway through my process. And then I'm going to just take this, and I'm going to just try to keep from getting the bottom sediment very much. And this thing's going to catch the rest of those curds. I'm going to call that good. And I'm going to just leave the rest of this. Now this time, well, let's see what I'm just saying that I've collected here. I'm almost to 2.5 cups. Almost to 2.5 cups. Now from here, you can do some more filtering at this point here. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do. And how I'm going to go about doing that, I'm going to utilize this again. I'll bring my strainer back onto this bowl here. I'm going to use a paper towel. I'll just cut a quarter of a paper towel here, and I'm going to push it down on my sieve, and I'm going to filter my labs even a little bit finer. And you don't have to do this. You're fine just like this. I just like to do it a little bit more. So I'm going to pour this in here. We have absolutely trillions of LactoBACILLI microbes in this solution here, in this whey. Set this aside. I'm going to let that drip through. So now what we have here, this is the nice thing about using these things here. If you make a big batch of it, and then you got all these curds here. And you can still see the liquid coming out of there. And now you can take this, feed it to your chickens, feed it to your pigs, goats, ducks, whatever, dogs, or you can eat it yourself and make a little farm cheese out of it. Or if you don't want to do that, some people, are discouraged from doing stuff like that, or they don't have animals and they don't want to take the time to make a cheese, they will just throw it in a compost pile. Either way, it's up to you. This doesn't have to go to waste. This doesn't go to waste. The remainder of your rice wash water doesn't have to go to waste, and your rice doesn't have to go to waste. So you can see how low cost this is, and we're talking one of the most beneficial bacteria that's well known, aerobic and anaerobic, that you can apply in your life, in your home, on your farm, in your gardens, in your fields, with your livestock as well and pets. It's amazingly, amazingly cheap. That's a lot, and I still have more left. All right, that is plenty. That is plenty right there. Write your date on here, stick it in the fridge as is, storage life 1 to 3 years, and what this can amount to when we go through the process of our dilution, this can turn out to be 5,000 gallons worth of LactoBACILLUS input for your farm. Or You want to go stronger dilution ratios, 1 to 500. Again, 2,500 gallons, 2,500 gallons for the cost of 5 cups of milk and a half a cup of rice, a little bit of brown sugar. That's what we're looking at. And that's how you go about it right there. Just extract it. You use the techniques that you want to use. You use the tools that you want to use. That's the objective, is just to get the whey. I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you share with somebody else if you think it might be beneficial or edifying. May all your branches become full of fruit. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Whoop!